Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like life just keeps throwing chaos at you? Like no matter how hard you try to move forward, something keeps pulling you back. Maybe it's the endless noise, responsibilities, fears, expectations, that voice in your head whispering, you're not enough yet. You wake up, grab your phone, and before your feet even hit the floor, the world is already shouting at you. Notifications, problems, pressure. You're reacting all day. You're not really living. And deep down, there's this quiet part of you that says, there's got to be more than this. Let me tell you, there is. Because the truth is, life isn't supposed to feel like survival. It's supposed to feel like creation, like clarity, confidence, and purpose. But that doesn't happen by accident. It happens when you start living by the rules of chaos and start living by the rules of clarity. And today, I'm going to share 7 life rules that can completely shift the way you see your world, the way you make decisions, handle pain, and find peace in the middle of pressure. These aren't theories. They're transformations. If you truly listen, not just with your mind, but with your heart, these 7 rules can help you reclaim your focus, your confidence, and your fire again. Because once you turn chaos into clarity, everything changes. You want to know where chaos begins? It begins the moment we give our power away, the moment we start believing that life is happening to us instead of for us. We point to the economy, our parents, our boss, our past, and we say, that's why I'm stuck. That's why I'm not happy. That's why I can't change. And yet, in that very moment, we surrender the steering wheel of our life. We hand over our power to something outside of us, and then we wonder why we feel lost, angry, or helpless. Let me tell you something straight. Nothing changes until you decide to own it all. Every emotion, every result, every reaction, every decision. Radical responsibility isn't about blaming yourself for everything. It's about claiming your power in everything. It's about saying, I might not control what happened, but I control what happens next. That's the shift. That's where chaos begins to lose its grip. When you take radical responsibility, you stop playing the game of excuses. You stop waiting for life to get better. You stop waiting for the world to be fair, for people to finally treat you right, for the timing to be perfect. You realize you are the timing. You are the one. That realization, that awakening, becomes the moment you move from chaos to clarity. I've met thousands of people who say, I just need clarity. I don't know what to do. But clarity doesn't come to those who wait. It comes to those who decide. It comes to the person who says, I don't need all the answers before I act. I just need to own where I am and take the next step. The truth is, the people who wait for certainty are the ones who never find it. The people who decide to take ownership, even when it's messy, even when it's uncomfortable, they are the ones who create it. Think about it. The moment you say, it's my life, I'm responsible for the quality of it, everything changes. You stop waiting for someone else to fix it. You stop needing permission to grow. You stop depending on the outside world to validate your worth. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what can I learn from this? What can I create from this? That question alone shifts you from powerless to powerful. We all have moments where life hits hard. When the business fails, the relationship breaks. When the dream falls apart, you can't control the storm, but you can control who you become in it. That's responsibility. You can sit there and say, why me? Or you can stand up and say, try me. Because the truth is, life is not testing your limits. It's revealing them so you can rise beyond them. Responsibility means you stop waiting for motivation and start creating momentum. You stop saying, I'll start when I feel ready, and instead decide, I'll feel ready when I start. You take action because that's what builds confidence. You make the call. You forgive the person. You show up again, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's not fair, even when it's not fair because Clarendon through action. And let's be honest, it's not easy. Taking responsibility feels heavy at first because it strips away all the excuses we've been holding on for comfort. It forces us to face the mirror and say, if it's meant to be, it's up to me. But that's also where freedom begins. When you stop running from your responsibility, you stop running from your power. I want you to imagine something. If every problem in your life was actually an invitation, not to suffer, but to grow? What if every challenge was life asking you, are you ready to lead yourself? That's what responsibility really is, self-leadership. Courage to own your story, even the parts that hurt. The strength to stop saying, they did this to me, and start saying, this taught me something about me. When you take responsibility, people might call you crazy. They might say, it's not your fault, but that's not the point. It's not about fault, it's about freedom. Because when it's someone else's fault, you can't change it. But when it's your responsibility, you can. You can shift your perspective, your energy, your decisions. You can take back control. And here's the truth. Clarity doesn't show up because you finally figured out every detail. It shows up because you finally decided to stop waiting. The second you choose ownership, fog begins to lift. You start to see possibilities that were always there. You just couldn't see them through the lens of blame. Responsibility wipes that lens clean. So if your life feels chaotic right now, if you're overwhelmed, lost, unsure, I want you to try this simple but powerful shift. Don't ask, why is this happening to me? Ask, what is this trying to teach me? Because life is not punishing you, it's preparing you. It's shaping you for what you've been asking for. But you can't receive clarity if you're still holding on to blame. Take radical responsibility, not someday, not when it's convenient. Now, own your story, own your choices, own your next step. Because when you do, you stop being the passenger in your life and start being the driver. That's where chaos ends and clarity begins. Every moment of your life is shaped by one thing, the state you're in. Not your circumstances, not your resources, your past, your state. The energy, focus, and emotion you bring into any situation determines how you experience it. You can take two people, put them in the exact same situation. One feels crushed, the other feels challenged. One freezes, the other fights. The difference isn't what happened to them, it's the state they entered it with. You see, chaos doesn't just live outside of us, it's often created from within. When you're anxious, fearful, or angry, everything around you starts to look worse than it really is. You start reacting instead of responding. You start seeing problems instead of possibilities. You start living from emotion instead of intention. And when that happens, clarity disappears. You can't think your way out of chaos when your nervous system is in survival mode. So if you want to move from chaos to clarity, you have to learn how to master your state. That's where real power begins. You have to understand that your emotions don't just happen to you. You create them. Every emotion you feel is a result of the meaning you attach to what's happening, the thoughts you focus on, and the way you use your body in that moment. That's why some people can experience heartbreak and turn it into art, while others experience it and turn it into anger. Same pain, different state. Most people try to control everything outside. The job, the money, the relationship, because they believe peace will come when everything out there finally settles. But that's not how life works. You can't wait for the storm to end before you decide to feel calm. You must learn to create calm in the storm, because if you can control your state, the chaos loses its control over you. Here's the truth. Emotion creates motion. The way you feel determines what you do, and what you do determines what you get. If you wake up stressed, tense, focused on what's missing, your entire day will reflect that energy. You'll see problems, you'll hesitate, you'll attract resistance. But if you start your day in a state of gratitude, strength, and certainty, everything changes. The same world, the same problems, but you are different. And that difference changes everything. Think about it. How do you move when you feel defeated? Shoulders drop, breath shortens, your face tightens, your focus narrows. How do you move when you feel alive and confident? Your posture changes, your breath deepens, your energy expands. It's not magic, it's physiology. The fastest way to shift your emotion is to shift your motion. Move your body with purpose, breathe deeply, change your focus, and watch how quickly your energy transforms. You've probably had those moments when something stressful happened, but you laughed about it later. What changed? The event didn't. You did. Your state shifted. You gained perspective, loosened up, and suddenly what felt unbearable became manageable. That's the power you already have. You just have to learn to use it deliberately, not accidentally. We all have our emotional home. For some people, it's frustration. For others, it's joy. For some, it's overwhelm. The problem isn't visiting those emotions. It's living there. The goal isn't to never feel sad or angry again. The goal is to not stay stuck there. You have to decide that you are bigger than your emotions, that you can feel them, acknowledge them, and still choose the state that serves your highest self. Mastering your state is like training a muscle. You don't get strong by lifting one time. You get strong by doing it daily. You condition your mind and body to respond differently to stress, to uncertainty, to fear. You learn that when something goes wrong, instead of saying, "Why me?" you say, "Can I do right now to rise?" You catch yourself when your focus drifts toward what's wrong and you bring it back to what's possible. You breathe deeper. You stand taller. You take control of your inner world. And the beautiful thing is, once you understand how to change your state, you can change your life in seconds. You don't have to wait for the perfect circumstances to feel powerful. You can create that power anytime. You can shift from anxiety to action, from fear to focus, confusion to clarity, all by changing your energy. Every time life feels heavy, remember this: chaos outside doesn't have to mean chaos inside. You can be calm in the middle of a storm. You can choose presence over panic, focus over frustration. That's not denial. That's mastery. You're not pretending everything is fine. You're deciding that who you are inside is stronger than what's happening outside. Your emotions are signals, not shackles. They're there to guide you, not to trap you. When you learn to read them, manage them, and shift them, you gain control over your direction again. And that's when clarity starts to return, not because life got easier, but because you became stronger. So from this moment forward, let your emotions dictate your destiny. Use them as tools. Decide who you want to be before life tells you who to become. Breathe deeper, move stronger, focus sharper, and you'll notice something incredible. The chaos won't stop coming. It will stop shaking you. That's when you realize true clarity isn't found in peace. It's found in power. One of the biggest reasons people feel lost, overwhelmed, or stuck is because their life has become too complicated. Too much noise, too many choices, too many shoulds, pulling them in every direction. We live in a world that glorifies more goals, more stuff, more hustle, more comparison. And then we wonder why we feel like we can't breathe. The truth is, most people aren't drowning because they don't have enough. They're drowning because they're holding on to too much. You want clarity, you have to create space for it. You can't think clearly in the middle of mental chaos. You can't find direction when your mind is cluttered with distractions and doubts. The secret isn't adding more, it's subtracting what no longer serves you. Simplify to amplify, that's how you move from confusion to confidence. Think about it. How many times have you said yes when you want to say no? How many times have you scrolled, compared, or consumed so much that you lost touch with what you actually wanted? Most people wake up already behind, rushing to answer messages, check notifications, fix everyone else's problems, and by noon their energy is already scattered across 100 things that don't even matter. That's not living, that's reacting. When you live in constant reaction, clarity becomes impossible. You have to get brutally honest about what truly matters, not what the world says should matter. What actually lights you up, what aligns with who you are and who you want to become. Because until you define your priorities, the world will define them for you. You'll end up chasing goals that don't fulfill you, saying yes to people who drain you, and carrying responsibilities that were never meant to be yours. Simplicity isn't about having less ambition. It's about having more focus. It's not about doing less with your life. It's about doing what matters most. When you focus your time, your energy, and your attention on what truly matters, everything starts to make sense again. You start to see where you're going. You start to feel grounded instead of scattered. You start to feel powerful again. Clarity lives in simplicity. When you simplify your environment, your mind quiets. You simplify your goals, your path becomes visible. When you simplify your schedule, your energy rises. And when you simplify your relationships, your heart finds peace. The more unnecessary weight you release, the more space you create for meaning, creativity, and joy. Now let's get real. Simplification requires courage because it means letting go of things you used to feel safe, busy, or validated. It means admitting that some of the noise in your life is self-created. It means stepping away from the crowd and saying, this isn't my race anymore. It's not easy, but it's necessary. Because every layer of complexity you strip away brings you closer to your truth. Start with one area of your life, your environment, your mind, your commitments. Look around and ask, does this bring me closer to clarity or farther from it? If it's the latter, it's time to let it go. Maybe it's time to clean your workspace so your mind can breathe. Maybe it's time to limit your inputs, fewer opinions, fewer distractions, fewer things that drain your energy. Because the mind doesn't just need stimulation, it needs stillness. Stillness is where you meet clarity. Sometimes people say, I just don't know what I want. But in reality, they do know. They just can't hear it. The voice inside them is whispering, but it's drowned out by the noise of everything else. You slow down when you silence the unnecessary, that voice gets louder, your intuition sharpens, you stop asking for advice from the world and start listening to the wisdom within. That's what simplicity does. It reconnects you with yourself. Understand this simplicity is not the same as easy. It takes discipline to simplify your life. It takes boundaries to say no when everything in you wants to please others. It takes faith to trust that focusing on fewer things can actually create more impact. But once you do, something powerful happens. Your energy stops leaking. Your time stops disappearing. Your attention becomes your weapon instead of your weakness. Because here's the truth. Complexity kills execution. You can't take bold action when you're tangled in overthinking. You can't follow through when you're managing too many directions. The brain craves clarity, not clutter. The moment you simplify your focus, you reclaim your ability to move forward with strength. You stop second guessing, you stop hesitating, you just act with certainty and conviction. And isn't that what we all want? To wake up and know what truly matters, to stop running in circles, to feel peace in motion. That doesn't come from more information or more goals. It comes from more intention. You don't need a bigger to-do list. You need a clearer why. When you start simplifying your life, people might not understand. They'll say you've changed, that you've become distant, that you're doing less. But the truth is, you're not doing less. You're doing what counts. And while the world chases everything, you'll be mastering the few things that truly shape your destiny. So take a deep breath and look at your life. What can you release today that's not adding real value? What can you simplify so your focus becomes unstoppable? Because clarity isn't something you wait for, it's something you create by removing what's in the way. And once you do, once you strip away the noise and reconnect with what matters, you'll realize that simplicity doesn't make life smaller. It makes it infinitely richer. There's a reason so many people feel lost, restless, or unfulfilled even when they seem to have everything: money, comfort, opportunities. It's because they're living without a clear sense of why. They're chasing goals without meaning, running fast, but in circles, climbing ladders that may be leaning against the wrong wall. You can have all the tools, all the intelligence, all the ambition in the world. If you don't know why you're doing what you're doing, you'll eventually burn out or lose direction. Purpose is what turns chaos into direction. It's what gives meaning to the mess. When you wake up with a purpose, you don't just exist. You don't just react, you create. Purpose gives you an anchor when everything around you feels uncertain. It gives you strength when the struggle hits and clarity when confusion creeps in. Without it, you drift. That drift is where most people spend their lives, reacting to circumstances, chasing comfort, avoiding discomfort, doing what's expected instead of what's aligned. The truth is, your purpose isn't something you find one day by accident. It's something you decide. It's something you grow into through awareness, experience, and choice. It's already inside you, waiting to be recognized, but most people are too distracted to hear it. They're too busy living by other people's definitions of success, the job title, the car, the likes, the applause, and they confuse activity with fulfillment. You can be busy every second of your life and still feel empty if you're not connected to your why. Your purpose doesn't have to be massive or flashy. It doesn't have to change the world. It just has to mean something deeply to you. It could be raising a family with love and integrity, creating art that moves people, building a business that empowers others, or simply showing up each day with more kindness and presence than yesterday. Purpose is personal. It's what lights your soul on fire and makes you feel alive. But here's the thing. Purpose is tested in chaos. Anyone can feel clear when life is smooth. But when life gets messy, when the plan falls apart, when you're tired or uncertain, that's when your why becomes your compass. It keeps you grounded when your emotions are all over the place. It reminds you who you are and what you stand for. Without it, chaos pulls you in every direction. With it, chaos becomes noise in the background. You know your why, you stop needing motivation to act. You're no longer driven by fear or validation. You're pulled forward by something bigger than yourself. You make decisions differently. You stop chasing short-term comfort and start building long-term meaning. You stop asking, what's easiest, and start asking, what's right? That shift alone changes everything. Sometimes people say, I don't know what my purpose is, and that's okay. The way to discover it isn't by sitting around waiting for a lightning bolt of clarity. It's by doing. It's by living, trying, failing, learning, paying attention to what makes you feel most alive. You don't think your way into purpose. You act your way into it. The more you move, the more patterns you see. The more you give, the more direction you gain. Ask yourself, what do I love so much that doesn't feel like effort? What do I stand for when no one's watching? What pain have I lived through that I could help others rise from? The answers to those questions point you toward your why. Once you start following it, life starts organizing itself around it. Opportunities, people, and ideas begin to align because you're no longer fragmented. You're congruent. You're not fighting yourself anymore. Living with purpose doesn't mean life gets easier. It means it gets clearer. Challenges will still come, but they won't shake you the same way. Because when your direction is clear, even pain becomes part of the process. You stop seeing setbacks as punishment and start seeing them as preparation. You begin to realize that every detour has a reason, every delay carries wisdom, every difficulty builds depth. Let's be real. There will be days when you'll question everything. You'll doubt your path, your ability, your progress. That's normal. But when you're connected to your why, those doubts don't define you. They just remind you to return to your center. Purpose doesn't eliminate uncertainty. It gives you something stronger than uncertainty. We all reach a point in life where we have to decide, am I going to live by design or by default? Am I going to let the world shape me, or am I going to shape the world through who I become? That's what purpose does. It gives you design. It gives your days a sense of intention. It turns random moments into meaningful experiences. When you start living from that place, clarity stops being something you chase. It becomes something you carry within you. So if life feels chaotic right now, stop asking what you're supposed to do and start asking why you're doing any of it. Because once your why is clear, the how begins to reveal itself. You don't need every step mapped out. You just need to know what you stand for, what you're moving toward, and why it matters. When you know your why, you stop wandering and you start walking with purpose. Growth is a beautiful thing, but it's also uncomfortable. And one of the hardest truths about growth is this: you can't move forward if you're still holding on to what's behind you. You can't create a new chapter if you're busy rereading the last one. Every single person who wants to create real change in their life has to learn one vital skill: the ability to let go. Because letting go isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's the courage to say, I'm done carrying what no longer serves me. So many people I've stuck, not because they lack potential, but because they refuse to release what's heavy. They cling to old stories, old identities, pain, even when those things no longer fit the person they're becoming. They hold on to grudges, guilt, regrets, and outdated versions of themselves, and yet they wonder why their lives feel cluttered, why their energy feels drained. Clarity seems out of reach. The truth is, you can't reach for what's next if both hands are gripping what's gone. Sometimes the hardest part isn't taking a step forward, it's loosening your grip on what you thought was supposed to be. You may have built an identity around your past pain, or your achievements, or your failures. You've told yourself stories about who you are, stories like, I always mess things up, or I'm just not the kind of person who can succeed, or I can't trust anyone. And those stories, even if they once protected you, now the very things keeping you from peace. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending it didn't matter. It means choosing freedom over attachment. It means taking the lesson and leaving the weight. Honor what you've been through by not allowing it to define the rest of your life. Because every time you replay the same pain, you relive the same limitation. And you deserve more than that. It's not just about people or relationships. It's also about habits, beliefs, and environments that no longer align with who you're becoming. Sometimes you've outgrown certain versions of your life. You keep trying to shrink yourself to fit back into them because they're familiar. But comfort isn't the same as peace. Familiar doesn't mean right. Growth demands release. You can't expand while holding on to what keeps you small. I want you to think of your life like a garden. You can't plant new seeds if they're still filled with weeds from the past. You have to pull some things out, beliefs, attachments, fears, to make room for new growth. And yes, that process can be painful. It's uncomfortable to let go of what you've carried for so long, even if it's been hurting you. Sometimes pain becomes part of your identity, and releasing it feels like losing a piece of yourself. You're not losing yourself, you're reclaiming yourself. You're reclaiming your energy, your clarity, your truth. Letting go is an act of strength. It's saying, I'm not my past, I'm not my mistakes, not who I used to be. It's refusing to be defined by yesterday's limitations. And that's where real power begins, when you stop fighting for your limitations and start standing for your liberation. You can't rewrite your story until you stop rereading the old one. Sometimes the reason you haven't reached your next level isn't because you don't know what to do. It's because you haven't made space for it. You're still emotionally and mentally cluttered by what was. You can't pour new wine into an old container. The old container has to be released, emptied, reshaped. The same goes for your life. And letting go isn't a one-time event. It's a practice. You may have to do it again and again. Each time you grow, you'll encounter a new version of it, a new identity to release, a new attachment to outgrow, a new story to rewrite. That's how evolution works. You're meant to keep shedding layers, but because something's wrong, but because you're meant for more. Letting go also means forgiveness, not necessarily for others, but for yourself. Forgiving yourself for what you didn't know, for the times you settled, the times you let fear lead. You did the best you could what you knew then, but now you know more. And when you know more, you can choose differently. Forgiveness is not about approval, it's about freedom. It's cutting the emotional cords that keep you tied to the past so you can finally move forward. And remember, when you release something that doesn't belong anymore, it's not a loss, it's a clearing. Life has a funny way of filling empty space with something better, but only after you make room for it. So don't be afraid of the space that letting go creates. Don't rush to fill it with noise or distraction. Sit with it, because that's where clarity begins to grow. There will be people who don't understand your process. They'll say you've changed, and that's exactly the point. Growth is change. The moment you stop evolving to stay acceptable to others, you stop being true to yourself. The right people, the right opportunities, the right peace, they'll all meet you at your new level once you've released what no longer fits the journey. You're not here to live anchored to yesterday. You're here to rise, to expand, to evolve. And that can only happen when you have the courage to release what was. Because every time you let go, you don't lose, you create space for something greater. Perfection is a trap. It's the silent killer of dreams, the invisible wall that stops people from taking the very first step. We live in a world that glorifies flawless results, perfect timing, perfect bodies, perfect lives. And because of that illusion, most people never start. They wait for more confidence, more clarity, more certainty. They tell themselves, once I feel ready, I'll go all in. But the truth is, that feeling never comes. Readiness isn't something you wait for, it's something you create through action. Progress is what builds clarity. Momentum is what builds confidence. Yet most people try to think their way into change. They plan, overanalyze, talk themselves out of the very actions that could transform their life. They confuse movement with progress, staying busy, doing small, safe things. When what they really need is forward motion, even if it's messy. The truth is, you're never going to have the perfect plan. You're never going to know all the answers. And that's okay. Life rewards the ones who are willing to act despite uncertainty. Because every step you take, even the ones that feel small or imperfect, gives you feedback. That feedback gives you direction. And that direction creates momentum. Momentum is magic. Once you start moving, the universe starts moving with you. Opportunities begin to appear, ideas begin to flow, and energy begins to rise. None of that can happen if you're standing still. You can't steer a parked car. You've got to get it moving first. You don't need to sprint. You just need to start. Because once you're in motion, something incredible happens. You start to feel alive again. Perfection tries to convince you that your worth is tied to results that you can't celebrate until you've arrived. But progress teaches you something different. It shows you that joy doesn't come from arriving somewhere. It comes from knowing you're moving forward. It's not about the destination. It's about who you become on the journey. The person who keeps showing up, learning, adapting, growing, that's the person who wins. I've seen so many people sabotage their dreams because they're afraid to make mistakes. They're terrified of failing, of looking foolish, of being judged. What they don't realize is that failure is part of progress. Failure isn't the opposite of success. It's the foundation of it. Every person who's built something extraordinary has failed more times than most people have even tried. The only difference is they didn't let it define them. They used it, they turned it into fuel. When you embrace progress over perfection, you stop chasing approval and start chasing growth. You stop worrying about looking good and start focusing on getting better. You stop asking, what if it doesn't work? And start asking, what can I learn if it doesn't? That shift in mindset is everything. Because when you commit to progress, Every outcome becomes valuable, whether it gives you a win or a lesson. And here's something powerful: clarity doesn't come before action. It comes because of it. You figure out the path by walking it. You don't need the whole map to take the next step. You just need faith in motion, the belief that as you move, more will be revealed. Every experience, every challenge, every small win becomes a piece of the puzzle that leads you closer to your purpose. There will be days when it feels slow, when you question if what you're doing is even working. But don't confuse slow progress with no progress. Growth often happens in silence, in moments where it feels like nothing's changing. But deep down, you're building discipline, patience, resilience, all the things that perfection never teaches you. Progress is messy, it's uncomfortable, it's unpredictable, but it's real. And that's what makes it powerful. Because perfection may look good, it's an illusion. Progress, even when it's chaotic, is movement towards something greater. It's life in motion, and that's what brings fulfillment. Knowing you're evolving, expanding, moving forward, no matter how small the steps. Stop waiting for the perfect moment. It doesn't exist. Stop waiting for permission. No one's going to give it to you. Stop waiting for the fear to disappear. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision to move anyway. Only way out of confusion, doubt, or fear is through action. Small, consistent, deliberate action, because motion creates emotion. When you start moving, your energy changes, your focus sharpens, your belief strengthens. You don't have to have it all figured out today. You don't need to see the whole staircase to take the first step. What you need is to trust that progress, not perfection, is what will take you there. Because the path reveals itself to those who keep walking. So wherever you are right now, don't overthink it. Don't wait for the right time. Don't wait for the fear to fade. Start now, start small if you have to, but start. Because every time you choose progress, you build momentum, and once momentum takes over, everything changes. Clarity doesn't wait for perfection, it's born from progress.